Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bailey Stober. I'm the Communications Manager for the City of Kent. We're here today to discuss the public health quarantine facility that King County is attempting to locate in Kent. Today, you will hear from Kent Mayor Dana Ralph. Following Mayor Ralph, you will hear from City of Kent Deputy Attorney Tammy White. Also on hand to provide technical details are Matt Gilbert, our Deputy Director of Economic and Community Development, as well as Aaron George, the Long Range Planning Manager for the City of Kent, and Kent Police Chief Rafael Padilla. After remarks conclude, the speakers will take questions. Following that, the mayor and any speakers you heard from today will have brief availability for individual media interviews. And with that, I present you Kent Mayor Dana Ralph.
Good afternoon. After another conference call with King County today, I made the extremely difficult decision to direct the city attorney to file a temporary restraining order against King County. We want to be clear. We recognize our role as a large city to play our part in the this public health crisis. We don't take that responsibility lightly. But we all know one of the best ways to manage a crisis is with a plan, and King County has still been unable to articulate an adequate plan. On Wednesday, the county said that they would be moving patients into the facility in Kent in 9 to 10 days. Today, just before noon, merely 2 days later, the county notified us that patients could be arriving in Kent as soon as this evening. We felt it necessary to take this action because King County has failed to get permits despite the fact the city has raised this issue 3 times with leadership and our requests have been ignored. They have failed to give us adequate answers around public health and safety, especially around the issue of patients leaving this facility and traveling throughout our downtown. Permits would help ensure the safety of the patients who have been quarantined in this facility that have been exposed to the virus, as well as the health and safety of the community at large. I again urge King County to partner with the City of Kent and present us with a reasonable and realistic plan so we can work together in this crisis. Kent will be your partner. We will work with you, but you need to engage us and involve us and help us be a part of that plan and not work against us. At this point in time, I will turn it over to Deputy City Attorney Tammy White to answer questions about the temporary restraining order.
So our argument right now on the temporary restraining order should be taking place as we speak. We were forced into a position with just about 2 hours to act today in order to prepare all of our pleadings and have them filed and argued in court. The temporary restraining order seeks to maintain the status quo. It prohibits King County from bringing infectious individuals into the City of Kent, into the Econo Lodge property, until King County proceeds through the permitting process, which gives the City of Kent an opportunity to evaluate the use that is going to be happening at the property and ensuring that appropriate conditions are in place in order to maintain the public health, safety, and welfare of the Kent citizens. If there's any questions about the particular process, I'm happy to answer those.
What's the legal basis for, the restraining order?
So under the Kent City Code, when there is a change in circumstances on the property, there is some review that needs to be done as to whether or not that use is allowed in the zoning district. The use of the property prior was as a motel and a hotel. It was not used as infectious disease control. And so that is the use and the change that needs to be evaluated by our planning staff and conditions determined as to which are appropriate to maintain public safety. So that's what we're looking to maintain, is having them follow our Kent City Code.
Wouldn't the proclamation of a public health emergency provide that concern now?
It actually doesn't. So the state of emergency allows the waiver of some provisions, which would include procurement and contracting and those sort of things. We've not been able to find anything that would waive the permitting and zoning requirements of a local jurisdiction.
Has the city filed it, or the county filed it?
To my knowledge, they filed nothing with the City of Kent yet. We've asked them to do so, and they were explicit in our conversation this afternoon that they stated they didn't believe they needed any conditions or approval from the City of Kent, and they were proceeding and intended to possibly have individuals there as soon as tonight, and they had 2 to 3 identified that they were going to be bringing in.
I don't know who would best answer this, but I would love to know officials' concerns for what you guys are thinking if you're going to start to bring in possibly infected patients starting tonight. It seems that in many ways that facility is not prepared.
That's exactly the concern that we have. The facility, we are not convinced that it's been prepared. We do not know of what changes have been made. Things like fencing, which we agreed to on Tuesday, that has not been done. We have not been able to get public health to provide us with a plan for making sure that folks that are infected with this virus stay on the property. We've talked about things like if they choose to leave, that they could then go through a legal process to get them to come back, but by then the exposure to the larger community could have actually occurred. So it's really about us trying to make sure that we're protecting the people that are staying in the facility and that it's up to code and standards and all of those things, as well as the larger public.
Mayor, I know this is such a unique situation in many aspects. Are you surprised by how, the lack of information and how contentious things seem to be getting with the county?
I'm frustrated. I have said over and over again through this process, the city of Kent wants to partner with King County. We acknowledge, understand, and are extremely sympathetic to the fact we're in a crisis, but the crisis doesn't prevent conversation and communication and planning. We need a plan now more than ever.
And do you mind me asking King County's response when you ask for answers? What is it that they're telling you?
So we've had 3 conference calls over the last 4 days, and we have been able to get answers to some of our questions, but in a lot of cases, we're going to need to get back to you, or as you heard Tammy White say with the permitting, it was just a flat out, we don't believe we need one. So, and we've been asking for that process since Tuesday. That permit, it's not bureaucracy. It's really about us ensuring, again, that the patients that are there at the facility are safe and that it's meeting the health standards as well as our larger community.
I guess if I was a member of a King community, I'd just kind of be wondering, hey, what's this mean for me? If I kind of walk near that area, can you address what that means?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and I will tell you I've had hundreds of emails over the last few days since this became public, and there is concern, and that's also part of this process is that I need to be able to look my citizens in the eye and say to them, we're doing everything we can to make sure that you're safe, and I have not been able to get satisfactory answers to those questions to be able to do that. Again, I just want to confirm we know that we have a role to play in this. We know that that's really important. We are a big city, not at all saying that we don't have a responsibility. We just want to do it in a way that is safe and responsible to both those that have been exposed and infected to this horrible virus and the residents of Kent at large.
Something that we're starting to see now too is kind of the fallout of the fear and the chaos that can come out of, coronavirus.
Yeah.
What's happening in our state. What's this tell you about how the county and some of our higher officials are handling this virus?
I think there's a lot of unknowns about this, and that is making people anxious. You can go anywhere in the community and you're seeing less people, and people have a lot of questions if you watch the conversations on social media. And I am a huge fan of the idea we need to provide more information than people are looking for than not. And so that's, again, part of why we're doing what we're doing is we need to provide our public with answers so that they can be assured that they're being protected, that everything we can do to keep them safe is happening, so they can have that conversation with their kids.
And what's the bigger concern? Is it coronavirus in the quarantine site or possibly what this facility would be used for after?
I think that they are both right up there on the list. We know that we need to get through the process with the virus itself, but we do have significant concerns about what that facility could be in the future.
We didn't take any action if they started moving people in. I know they've already moved people out.
So I am going to defer that to possibly our police chief.
Good afternoon. We will follow the stipulations of the court order if we in fact get that. So we would take it from there. Technically, we want to resolve this without any issues whatsoever. Nothing in terms of us using force or anything like that. And really what we're talking about is that the county would be in violation of a court order. So it's a contempt of court. It's a serious matter, and we would deal with it through the courts.
So if they can start, and I'm just sorry, I'm just trying to clarify, like if we're live out there tonight, we see people starting to move in, possibly who have this virus, what would officers do?
Well, I want to be clear. We won't know if we get the order. So that's coming hopefully by 4:30 today. If we are successful in getting the temporary order, then we would advise people at site that they are in violation of the order, and then we would pursue further recourse to the courts. We're not looking to arrest anybody who's infected or anything like that. We're not looking for a physical confrontation at all. We just want to make sure that they're aware that they're in violation of the law, and we'll take it from there.
And do you mind me asking your thoughts on just how far this has gotten with the county? That you guys are having to now take these steps?
I share the mayor's frustration. Like she said, in a time of crisis, we work months in advance of this through our Office of Emergency Management. We've worked, really in earnest since 9/11. The emphasis has been on communication, interoperability, and partnerships, and this completely flies in the face of that. This is a unilateral move, very behind the scenes, clandestine, and it's just wrong.
You also signed an emergency proclamation today. Can you explain is that related to this legal action, or is it something separate?
That emergency proclamation, it was the prudent thing to do because we do believe we're going to see a spread of this virus. We need to make sure that we have everything in place to be as responsive as we can. And there is a concern, should this facility open without the safeguards in place that we believe are the best for, again, both the patients that will be at the facility and our community. We need to be able to take swift action. And I want to follow up on one of those questions about how we're going to respond. The absolute last thing that we want to see is those patients being stuck in the middle of a disagreement or a battle between jurisdictions. That to me would be the worst possible outcome ever. It is not the fault of the people that have been exposed to this virus, and they should not be placed in a position where this becomes a battle back and forth. That would, to me, would be, like I said, the worst possible outcome.
Karen, could you explain the court process right now that's happening before certain judge?
Sure. So it was a flurry of activity. As I think was previously stated, we had no intent to file this today. Communications were still happening, we thought, between the county and the city as to what was going to happen with that property. It was only during a phone call today at 11 o'clock when county said that they would be possibly moving people in as soon as tonight that we realized we didn't have time to wait. And so we had a matter of hours to get all of the pleadings put together, which includes the summons and complaint, which is needed just to start the litigation. But then the motion for a temporary restraining order is the piece that's being argued now, and that's the one that's seeking to just put everything on pause until we can get through that permit review and allow those communications to continue so that we can make sure that our public safety is maintained here in Kent. So what it is now is King County's received notice of that. I'm assuming that they've sent down a King County prosecutor to argue with our attorney on this issue, and a court commissioner will be the one to decide whether or not that temporary restraining order gets granted. After that process, there could be a hearing for a preliminary injunction, which will continue it for a little longer, and then there'll be the ultimate decision of the action should it get that far, should we not be able to resolve it short of that.
What is the permit that you're asking?
So I'm going to turn that over to our Economic and Community Development Department that can answer that.
Good afternoon. My name is Matt Gilbert, the Deputy Director of Economic and Community Development. The permit, it's a bit of an unusual situation, but we would focus first on quickly getting into place provisions to protect public safety. It would be a temporary use permit initially, and then probably a conditional use permit, which would permit the longer term use of the site.
Is that something hospitals need? Is it something for diseases? What is the permit typically for?
Typically, conditional use permits cover unusual types of uses, so hospitals, perhaps, yes.
Any other questions for the speakers? All right, then we'll wrap it up. Thank you all for being here.
Many scientists, researchers have concluded there are no racial differences. There are some, but not certainly to the point where, in the way the theory was sort of constructed, whites and blacks, whites are better anatomically and biologically, that's all. It's just fiction. But that fiction became nonfiction. And to this day, there are consequences for this fiction. Some people have privilege, and a lot of people get killed for it. Even today, even in the year 2020, you have people who face those consequences. So very quickly, I have a trivia question for you. What do you, actually, let me go back here. I shouldn't have done that, but what do you think my race label says on my birth certificate? So Washington, D.C., 1970s baby. Asian, good guess, I get that a lot. I don't think they were officially using that label in the 70s. Sorry?
East Indian.
East Indian, good guess. I don't think, yeah, nope. Black, good guess. What's a bigger demographic than black? Latino, what's a bigger demographic than that? What's the biggest demographic in the US? There we go, bingo. And I know it's a little confusing, you're thinking, no, you don't look white. Neither do any of you. There are no white people or black people, right? It's a fiction, right? None of you look the skin color, none of your skin color is white or black, right? So in this convoluted, crazy story of race, white and black, there is sort of this notion people from Europe kind of came down, went to Europe, North America, and there's another group of people that went through Middle East and into South Asia. So technically, in the race theory, all South Asians, Bangladeshis, Nepalis, Sri Lankans, Indians, they're all Caucasian. And in the US, we kind of get confused. We think all Caucasians are white people. They're not in this story. So I just share this with you just to keep in mind it's a construct. Race is an incredible sort of fictional construct, but unfortunately has had many, many negative consequences. All right. So I spent the first 4 years of my life in Washington, D.C., Maryland. Then I moved. My parents are from India, so I get that a lot, right? I know some of you, when I asked you where I'm from, a lot of people say India. But so when I tell people, look, I'm from here, people will say, but no, where are you really from? And I know where they're trying to get to. But I'm always amazed that we don't do that to Caucasians in the US. We don't go like, are you from Belgium? Are you Swedish? Are you Polish? But where are you really from, right? Because we just presume if you're Caucasian, have an American accent, you must be American. But if you're Asian or Hispanic, you had to have come from somewhere else, which most of us have. Unless you're full-blooded Native American, you are not from here. Well, you are from here, but you came from somewhere else, or at least your lineage is from somewhere else. So I have an Indian lineage. My parents moved back to India. I went with them, and my dad wanted me to go to a school where all kids look like me, or most of them look like me, because we are an ethnic minority just about anywhere we go. My parents belong to a faith called Sikhism, and you actually have a lot of members of the Sikh faith who live in Kent, probably one of the largest concentration in the US. It's a very young 500-year-old faith, and as part of that faith, men and women keep long hair, or at least they're supposed to. You will meet some Sikhs who do not have long hair. So boys keep that hair on top of their heads in a bun. The reason I like to share this photo also is I started wearing glasses when I was really young. Now, glasses today are considered really cool. A lot of us wear them, cool brand names, funky designs. I know people who don't need glasses who wear glasses because they think, hey, it looks cool. But when I was a little boy, and some of you probably can relate to this, glasses were not cool. You became target for bullies a lot of times, and unfortunately, I did too. In school, at home, I have one brother who happens to be an older brother, and he's a more handsome version between the two of us. It's obvious to me, obvious to him, everybody else. He never reminded me of that fact, but unfortunately, a lot of other people did. A lot of family members did. Once in a while, you don't mind if somebody's throwing some negative stuff at you, you bounce it off. But if a lot of people, loved ones, even strangers, if they keep repeating something, after a while, you sometimes say, well, maybe they're right. So by the time I was in high school, I had heard the variation of the word ugly in 3 different languages that I speak from all kinds of people. So I unfortunately accepted that label by the time I was in high school because I felt, well, if everybody's saying it, it must be true. So I've spent most of my life since then overcompensating for that label. What can I do to prove to people, hey, I'm a worthy human being or a good human being? So I said, all right, I'll study hard, I'll get good grades, I'll go to top universities, and I'll do well, which is a good goal to have. But the reason behind that is certainly not a good reason, right? For you to think, okay, I'm not good looking, so therefore I have to live for